Hey guys, it's me, Ellie, aka Looks from the Crypt, and today we are going to be getting into what is a very long overdue video for me. I planned on filming this video in April, but then that turned into like this really like chaotic like dumpster fire of a situation, and I did not. So here we are 3 months later in July, and now we're getting into it. And what we're getting into today is ranking all 5 Evil Dead films from worst to best. This is a very beloved franchise that we've all have come to know and love. If you know me, you might know what my ranking might look like. I wanted to film this video, of course, in celebration of Evil Dead Rise coming out this year. Another reason why I want to do this is that the Evil Dead franchise, out of all the like classic like ultimate horror franchises that there are, Evil Dead is like definitely like my favorite, at least like that like first 3 films, the like actual trilogy. That's like my favorite franchise out of all the popular mainstream horror franchises. So if you're interested in hearing my hot takes and personal ranking of the Evil Dead series, grab a snack, grab a drink, and keep on watching. My thing with Evil Dead Rise is it's a fine movie. It did not feel like a movie that I should be seeing in theaters. It felt like a very much made for streaming movie. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. And I just feel like it's just a movie nobody asked for. And I wasn't really excited for going into, but it was another Evil Dead movie coming out, so of course I was going to go see it. However, I do think it was really exciting for the franchise to take a turn, and that turn to be going into like a whole new like location and with different characters, just because that's something we're not used to. Because like although Evil Dead 2013 does have different characters, we don't like have like Ash or anything like that, but it's very much same feels, same story, same vibes, whereas this is like a completely new story, which did and didn't work. My main gripes here with Evil Dead Rise are just that I feel like I just did not enjoy the Deadites. I did not enjoy like the really bad CGI that was going on throughout like this whole fucking movie. And yeah, the Deadites, they didn't look good. They sounded even worse.
Mommy's with the maggots now.
The Deadites, they try to keep up with their like typical fashion of saying really like nasty and like obscene things, which just didn't really work here. It didn't really have that same effect of being either funny or creepy or being like, ooh, that's evil. It would just kind of like cringe. Like the new location seemed cool. I did like the thought of escaping from the cabin in the woods, even though I think that's kind of quintessentially like a really crucial piece to the Evil Dead like situation, but I was like open to it and interested. I feel like with our new location, unfortunately, we have the issue of, I won't give any spoilers, I'll just say like how we get to the point where like demonic shit's happening just doesn't quite like add up, and it just doesn't make for as good of a story or like as like legitimate of a story as what we see in the other Evil Dead films. At the end of the day, I thought it was fine, but it was also something I just didn't really like care for. And the only thing that really made this movie truly Evil Dead was that we shoehorned a whole lot of Easter eggs and a lot of references to our previous films. However, I didn't really like that. It didn't really feel like fan service or anything like that. It just felt really forced and like kind of cringe in a way. And in all honesty, I think I would have liked this movie better as like a non-Evil Dead film and just like a more typical possession kind of film, just because I feel like the elements that were Evil Dead, they didn't pack those punches. I feel like there was like a lot of holding back because this was like Evil Dead for families as opposed to a horror movie for adults. And I personally can't like get behind the horror for like the whole family situation, because personally, I didn't get that growing up myself, so I don't really have like a connection to like the kind of like teen-led like vibe, if that makes sense. Like which I feel like is like a very Netflixy situation with horror, if that makes sense. And again, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. However, I will say I only did watch it once. I saw it in the theater, which was a very poor theater experience as well, which is why I didn't end up doing this video I intended to, because the theater had a bunch of people and I hate that. And there were people like who literally chose to have their seats literally right next to me without like a seat between or anything when there's lots of room. And then the people we were also sitting next to this was so fucking cringe and embarrassing. I had like secondhand embarrassment. It was like what I believed to be was like a date, and the man was like explaining every single like reference, callback, Easter egg to like the woman he was on a date with. So with that being said, and like it feeling like such a streaming movie, I am excited to watch it at home. Some movies just kind of live up to a home release a lot better than like a full on like theater experience, and I feel like that's how I felt about this one, because this movie felt like the random bullshit I would throw on. Evil Dead Rise, more like Evil Dead fuck them kids, am I right? And this might feel controversial to some, because I know this is a very beloved entry into the franchise, but Evil Dead 2013 does take my number 4 spot. And honestly, I actually really do enjoy Evil Dead 2013. I feel like it also deserves super big recognition for like the amount of blood that they use and all the practical effects. And I feel like it really kept what is the spirit of Evil Dead, but serious this time around. And I feel like the Evil Dead series really works with like a serious like pull and like direction, and I really enjoyed it. The Deadites rule in this one. I like the kills. It's just fun, and like in addition to that, I feel like this story, despite it not being the original story, it's still very closely rooted in that, but like its own new take that really works for this. And I felt like I was surprised I hadn't seen this, but I thought this was such a great way to present possession, whereas somebody is going out to like the woods to get clean and like detox, and their behavior, their friends think that is them detoxing and being like absurd for that reason, because they want to go get high and not because they are quite literally possessed. Which I feel like that was like a really fun vibe, and also really added to like the claustrophobicness of being stuck in this cabin in the woods. Yet something I do want to say though, since I know everybody really fucking loves Evil Dead 2013, I just think it's kind of like a pretty good movie. It's all right. I am not calling home about it. I see like a lot of people ranking this in their like 1 and 2 spots, but not for me. I like it, but I just feel like it doesn't quite live up to the hype that everybody's assigned to it. And now what I have here is the super like chaotic energy lol so random entry into the series, which is Army of Darkness, taking my number 3 spot. So Army of Darkness is fucking wild. First off, I feel like, I don't know, this is just a really fun entering into the series, because I feel like this is where we truly go like really full camp, and we entirely lean into the comedy that is here in this series. And this is when I just think it's really funny that at this point we spent 3 movies with Ash, and we still basically the most character development we get out of him is in this movie, knowing that he works at S-Mart. Which is another reason why I love this franchise, is just because there's really no like bullshit. like we have our very like basic stripped down story, but at the same time that's all we really need when we have all these like really awesome imaginative like things going on, and like great story, great jokes, and also just great effects. I feel like the costumes and like the set and also like all the like makeup and masks in this movie are just absolutely like phenomenal. I love it. And something I love about Army of Darkness is just like, since we are lacking the character development, even though it is fun to see Ash go through this like character arc of just being like sick of this fucking shit, it leaves us to be able to just experience and like fully delve into this entirely immersive and like ambitious as fuck story and be able to just fully soak in what is like the set, the like absolute like silly goofiness, and like the really like gross out scenes that are very, very abundant in this one. Here's my thing. Army of Darkness, that's how you do Evil Dead movie for the whole family, right? Because it's still very much in true fashion without like making it that certain type of way that makes it feel as aimed at teenagers as opposed to actually the entire spectrum of ages. I also love this because it is a really imaginative way to try to cap off this story that weirdly, despite how fucking absurd and like out of the box it is, it doesn't feel like like a forced way to wrap up this story at all. And plus, it's just like the whole journey is so much fun with Ash being in like the underworld or like old teen hundreds and all that, and him being like a part of like a prophecy that these people saw, and he has to like fight all these like demons. Like, I don't know, it's just so much fun. Like, what is there not to enjoy about it? And here's another moment where it might get a little controversial for some folks. Obviously, there's only two options left now. And next is the original Evil Dead. I just want to show off, like, my, like, really cool copy of this. The, like, rare cover, because I'm a fucking nerd. And this is just, like, one of those things that's, like, one of my favorite things in my collection. The thing about, like, Evil Dead is that I think it is a fucking great movie. And I feel like so much of it, even though it is like a low budget movie for its time, and like this is like kind of like the prototype that they had laid out, it is like it still does like so much, and like the effects are really there. And again, like how I said about Army of Darkness, and how it's funny how this is the most we know about Ash, but like we don't like waste time on like character building, backstory, and all that stuff, and we really don't need it. This movie is like genuinely very funny and has its like scary moments, and I feel like just the way like the effects and the makeup look are like absolutely killer in this as well. I just feel like simply we can't really like deny what is the original Evil Dead, even if it is just Ash being like thrown into furniture half the movie, and that's like kind of it. And him just getting his like ass kicked by demons more or less, but then at the end he does prosper. And I just think, I don't know, Evil Dead just did like so much. It was so inventive, and like with like the POV like demon camera, like needless to say, that's one of like the most influential things that had like occurred in horror, period. And like, I mean, so is Evil Dead in general. I could not fucking tell you how many like Evil Dead ripoff movies there are, and yeah, of course some of them better, some of them worse, but that in itself says kind of everything. Like how I feel like I could make a whole video that would be like way too fucking long about every single Evil Dead ripoff. And again, the POV camera of the demons is huge, and it's something that we've never really seen before that is honestly very scary and just is so fucking cool. Like something about just seeing, like, you know, the situation is just so dope. And like, we hadn't seen anything like that in a movie before. We had never seen anything like the tree scene really before either, which is also just a huge mark as well. I mean, it's referenced in like pop culture constantly, and like, I mean, we get in every single Evil Dead movie. That is one of the things that Evil Dead is known for, because nobody had seen anything like that at that point in time. And of course, although Evil Dead is in my number 2 spot, I still think it's a 5 out of 5 movie every time. I fucking love this movie with my whole heart. And I have a lot of like sentimental like shit with that movie, just because it was like a movie, one of like very distinct movies that's like ingrained into my brain that I grew up watching. It was like one of my like kind of like introductions to horror, watching this with like my dad growing up. And of course, it's just one of those things that really stuck with me. And then that leaves us with our number 1 spot being Evil Dead 2, which is actually my favorite, which I feel like is also controversial, but like, what other movie is a fucking sequel and also a remake, and how fucking bizarre is that? And in addition to it being both a sequel and a remake, I've never ever fucking heard of a movie doing that, and that's one of the most bizarre choices somebody can make. in all honesty, but I feel like it's such a good choice for this franchise because like the first one is like I think legitimately good, although it being a little silly goofy because of its low budgetness. However, this one is it leans into the silly goofy intentionally, of course. This is one of the really funny ones, of course, with like this is when Ash gets his like chainsaw arm and like all that shit, and he just kind of like fed up with the demons. And something else that's like a really hot take that I think will make people want to scream at me for about this movie is that Evil Dead 2 is a fucking experimental film. I say that somewhat in jest, of course, but like in all honesty, on my most recent like rewatch of these, I kind of like had the like mind blown moment about it when realizing that, because try to watch Evil Dead 2 without the context of Evil Dead 1. And because technically, since it is a remake, it should be able to stand alone, right? It's fucking weird when you try to put everything you already know away and watch it through that lens. It's fucking bizarre. Like, this does not operate how a normal movie would work by any means. And for example, we have basically little to no dialogue throughout like a vast majority of this movie. It starts basically fucking instantly, and I don't know, like just there's just a lot of, like I mean fucking premise wise, like I said, basically little to no dialogue. It spends a lot of time creating like an atmosphere, which is super fucking cool. And with that, like just a lot of the like shots and just how like this movie looks is really strange and like dreamlike. And I feel like that's something that I feel like I never was really able to like fully grasp before, because I just feel like I always like in my head had a preconceived notion like Evil Dead 2, haha, silly, kind of shit. But then like when you watch it, like when you're trying to watch it as like a clean slate, it's fucking weird. And I really recommend having this experience. And with that being said, Evil Dead 2 is my favorite. I don't know, just something about it, and like in addition to it, just I don't know, it just really like works. This is probably the only like movie series that could do a sequel remake and for it to make sense. And honestly, it should probably come to like no surprise once I like gave you that framework of Evil Dead being like an experimental film. I say that loosely, of course, but this is not how a fucking traditional movie is made by any means, from its conception to the product that we get. And that's why it should absolutely come to no surprise that Evil Dead 2 is my favorite, just because like at the end of the day, I am the weird experimental art house hoe. That is what I'm here for at the end of the day. If some shit doesn't make sense, I'm all over it. However, all in all, though, I'm just going to say Evil Dead as a whole is an S tier franchise. Although I'm not like the biggest fan of like the 2000s entries, I still think that at least Evil Dead 2013 does have its spot in this like series. I don't feel that so much about Evil Dead Rise. But with that, I just think that like the Evil Dead, the original trilogy, is just so fucking solid and so much fun, and it just does everything that is the reason why I like horror. It's funny, it's weird, it's campy. It has like fresh things going on, whether it be because it's your first time watching it or because of it's just like mark in horror. It just has done so much, and in addition to just being like a really great like watchable, accessible series, because that's something I do look for is this something that I feel like anybody can just watch, right? Because I feel like a lot of us who are into horror and really immersed into the genre, we definitely get really like deep down and like digging into those ditches, which is like something that like is really fun, of course, if you're really into it. However, it doesn't make for like the best like watching a movie with like a friend who isn't that invested kind of thing. However, I feel like Evil Dead can bring that experience, and anybody from somebody who doesn't watch horror movies or dabbles or is like a casual viewer or a diehard horror fan can find something in any of these movies that they really love. And there is a movie in the franchise for everyone, as fucking like corny as that sounds, but it's true. And with that being said, what were your guys' thoughts on Evil Dead Rise? Did you like it? Did you think it was meh? Whatever. What did you think? And what does your own personal ranking look like of the Evil Dead series as a whole? I'm really curious about what everybody's rankings look like, and like I guess their reasoning for it, and also if you hate me for saying that Evil Dead 2 is experimental. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been me, Ellie, aka Looks from the Crypt, and I am out.